Thank you. So a very warm welcome to this panel. As said, my name is Waleed Mansour, and I'm very delighted to have had this chance of interviewing the four of you. As you can see that the panel comprises different backgrounds. So we have a diplomat, but we also have someone who comes from the oil sector, one sector that is known to be not so eco-friendly, but here we will hear about success stories. And then we also have another case from the energy sector as well, and the finance represented by Banque. Ahlan wa sahlan, and warm welcome, and thanks to the great organizers of this event. It's always a pleasure to be here. My first question will go to Her Excellency, Janaina Herrera, and I would start saying once again, warm welcome, and I would pose this question to you as we come to know you as a very young and active diplomat in Alexandria, but also in Egypt. You talk very often about climate change, environmental issues. You bring this to the forefront both as a person but also as a diplomat. We've heard about your initiatives, the Green Embassy, and the support you give to the civil society. Coming from France puts a little bit on your shoulder that you're the country where the Paris Agreement has been set to standards. Please tell us more about this, particularly that countries in economic transition claim that they have the same rights that France and other industrial nations had before to pollute, and therefore they would like to pollute as much so that they can reach the same economic standard France has today. How do you see that? Do we have the time to pollute? Do we still have this chance?
Thank you very much, Waleed. I'm delighted to be here. So straight to the point. Thank you for this question. It's the hardest question we've been asked every time in multilateral negotiations. So we've been thinking about this, and let me tell you, I think it's based on an outdated analysis of the facts. The facts are: who do you think is the first polluter in the world today?
Developed countries.
It's China. Who is the second? The US, and the third is India. So 2/3 of the biggest world polluters today, and it's not just this year, it's been many years, are actually from the global south. So this idea that they're the good poor guys and the mean rich guys is wrong. You should update these premises. The second element I think is important is that, okay, we know we went down the wrong path. Does it mean we should fight for the right of everyone to commit the same mistake when we know now how expensive these mistakes are? Should we fight for everyone to pollute and ruin our atmosphere? Or should we fight so that the biggest polluters join the fight against climate change? The third element that I would like to tell you is that what you said, this reasoning is based on a linear, linear vision of development, that there's only one track, those who are lagging behind, and those who are in the forefront, and there's only one path. I want to tell you that you can leap forward into clean, green energy. You don't need to go through the dirty path. And that gives us hope. Last but not least, you can say there are floods, climate change, sea level rise. You cannot tell the people, well, it's not our fault. If you look historically, a century ago, the bad guys were the polluters in Europe or in the States. They will ask you as a leader, they will ask you as a corporate leader, as a prime minister or a mayor, to find solutions, and we should focus on that. That's why France is taking the lead to gather, actually, to fundraise for the most vulnerable countries within the Green Climate Fund. We have announced, President Macron announced last year, a doubling of its contribution. We are the second world contributor to this fund that provides funding for developing vulnerable countries to fight climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Janaina. I think that's very well said and articulated. We come to understand this misleading way, but you pinned it down, listing exactly who are the bad guys or who are the polluters and who are the good guys, and in the middle we are floating, but there is really no good justification of continuing to pollute. This by number costs everyone a lot of money. Thank you. Mr. Moataz, Darwish, thank you for being on the panel with us. I was impressed to see your CV on LinkedIn, and knowing you are the Government and External Relations Manager of Shell. Please explain to us more on your role and how is that related to sustainable development at Shell.
Sure, thank you. My name is Moataz. I'm working for Shell for the past 15 years, and my role is focused on a couple of mandates. One of them is what we call in Shell the social license to operate. So it's licensing to operate is our attempt to have the license to operate in a country through the right mechanisms, through going through the right licenses with the government and whatnot, but also we firmly believe that it also needs a societal license to operate. So the society that might not have had the clear right to allow companies to operate in their homeland, we believe they do have the right now, and we feel the obligation to give them this voice and allow them to accept us as prudent, responsible operators in their homelands. And that's part of my mandate as a social. It used to be called CSR, in some companies still they call it CSR or whatnot. We call it, we split it into two. We call it social investment and we call it social performance. And the focus of the social performance, which is the bigger umbrella, is how to mitigate the impact of our operations in our ring-fenced communities, with our ring-fenced communities, to make sure they are not negatively impacted. Plus, we add value to these communities as well through our other arm, which is the social investment arm. So this is part of the mandate, not the full mandate, but I think it's a concept that needs to be promoted for all companies, or responsible companies that want to operate in different countries.
Particularly when it comes to the oil, where there's also a lot of, so to say, emissions being produced, and there's
any industry has its negative impact on societies, needs to be mitigated. Whether you are driving a truck and making noise, whether it's impacting the water quality, the air quality, whatever it is, in whatever industry, it needs to be done responsibly. The industry and the company need to understand their negative impact, if any, and mitigate that. And that's part of the societal license to operate. Plus all the other license to operate reasons of paying your taxes, getting your license from the governments, and doing all other stuff. So this is another added responsible part of doing business.
I will come back to you with more questions on exact, for example, examples of what you have done. But let me then move to another phase of the energy sector, where I will talk to Ghada Hammouda. You are an award-winning Chief Sustainability and Marketing Officer. You've joined Qalaa Holding since some good number of years now.
2008. Yeah.
And you're working on energy and green infrastructure there. When I saw the profile, I was thinking, Einstein, when he said, if you bring all the energy in the world, you cannot move 1 second back. And the energy sector has created so much damage to the atmosphere. And if we bring all our energy together, we still may not be able to make it happen, but at least we can improve what the future will look like. Can you give us some of the examples that your company has done in the previous years that is more prone to green and sustainable energy?
Okay, let me just take a back step. Thank you for this introduction. I'm really happy to be with everyone here today. So the topic of sustainability has become the topic du jour. Everyone is speaking about it. Many are only whitewashing and just talking about it as a term instead of practicing. I'm very proud to be here representing the company, an Egyptian company. It was a startup in 2004 by two entrepreneurs that wanted to do a lot in the localization of industries, and they focus on energy and infrastructure, as you were saying. I think it has been part of the DNA of Qalaa Holdings from the very beginning to be a responsible investor. And what that meant, and I have to also admit, part of that was driven by the source of funding. We had to get most of the funding as a private equity firm from multilaterals, DFIs, export credit agencies that put a lot of focus on compliance with environmental, social, economic standards. That has made it part of the DNA of this company as it has grown over the years. We have put in a lot of, we have Taqa Arabiya, which is energy, a gas distribution company. We're connecting gas, a cleaner source of energy to the homes, over 1 million customers. They invested in solid waste management with Tawazun, Ikaro, and Intag, generating RDF, generating, actually providing a waste to energy play to the cement industry. And they've also had the $3.4 billion investment in a second stage refinery. Arguably, refineries are pollutants. However, the conscious investment there was it was going to be an import substitution play. 30 to 40% of the diesel that Egypt is consuming would be produced locally, which meant a lot of efficiencies, both in terms of dollars that were being saved for the country, but also in terms of waste. As you're transporting most of this, you're creating a lot of pollution. The other aspect of it, obviously, there was economic job creation, all the different. I had a video and I was really hoping to show you, and I encourage everyone to try to make a trip to Mansour to look at this project that was done by Egyptian hands and 20 other nationalities that brought to Egypt an environmentally responsible project, but also a project that is making a difference economically and socially. The environmental, it's cleaning up the air, a lot of the pollution that was coming in from Mbasset that were going up in the air, and the emissions. This is really taking all of this and producing from it value-add products that, again, Euro 5 standard, 2.3 million tons of Euro 5, that is cleaner. Again, it's not the best that you're still doing, working with fossil fuel, but it is a cleaner version. And I think that's what really we're hoping for, to have a greener and cleaner solutions, because you cannot make the transition to try to really go all the other ways. So it is part of the DNA of the company to try to bring these three aspects together, where every project and investment we have made try to be both environmentally responsible, economically responsible, as well as socially responsible. And I think this is something we need to keep in mind as we're trying to make transitions. We're one of the first companies, we are the only Egyptian company that signed the Climate Ambition 1.50 to really commit ourselves to, with a lot of global players, that we will be out there using scientifically based targeting to reduce our emissions and carbon emissions. And we are really in the process of doing much more concrete benchmarking. However, the targets across our company, and I'm as a Chief Sustainability Officer spending a lot of time on two aspects. One, how do we reduce our footprint, environmental footprint and carbon footprint, but also how do we improve and trying to neutralize. We're also trying to do a lot of efficiencies in terms of moving to solar. I mean, we are part of Banque.
This is something that I would have wanted. I will come back to it in another question. But also, I have noted this, and we will tackle this in another thing, that you were responsible for the 2.3 million tons of clean diesel, which is a skyrocketing performance when it comes to the Egyptian diesel. Yes, because for you in the room who don't know, Egypt is among 3 other top countries with the most polluting diesel worldwide. So the quality of the diesel being utilized is not at its best, but the 2.3 billion is really a good contribution.
Eliminating 186,000 tons of Egypt's sulfur dioxide.
Yes, this is because normally we have the 95, 92 octane of Euro standard, but we never have the diesel Euro standard, and this is where your intervention came. So congratulations on this. Thank you. And now I will move to Heidi, Head of Corporate Communication and Sustainable Development at Banque, which is a very new title for a bank that has just received a proper facelift. We all remember Banque and how the logo changed, but now they are looking into corporate communication and sustainable development. Please talk to us a little bit about your role at Banque and why is Banque adopting this in this very particular role.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be here. 4 years ago, Egypt started social economic reform, and one of the most important aspects of this was to touch base on the environmental issues. So, as the famous philosopher Ebert once said, the most three important ways to lead people is by example, by example, and by example. So Banque decided to take the initiative and join hands with a lot of prominent and prestigious institutes and NGO to create this eco-friendly environment. We have received 2 awards this year in recognition to our contribution, one from the Global Economic Award and the second one from the International Investment Award. I want to ask a question now. Why is the environment so important? Why are everyone talking about the environment? Environment does not only affect our health, but it also has a tremendous impact on the economy worldwide. So, for example, the plastics. Because of the plastics in the ocean, each year 100,000 sea creatures die, and over 1 million seabirds die. So we're losing our fortune. It is predicted that by 2050, the number of plastic will exceed the numbers of fish in the ocean. So another thing, because of the carbon, the sea level rise, a lot of towns will be reallocated. And for this, we will, of course, it will entail a huge amount of money. Scarcity of resources like water and also the rise of temperature will lead to diseases. This is why Banque is focusing now on this initiative. We have a lot of roles in terms of supporting the Egypt Vision 2030, supporting vital sectors, projects, especially the project that has to do with eco-friendly project, energy consumption reduction, clean energy. We are quite experts also. We have a long history of expertise in field of microfinancing. So we do support a lot of initiatives when we help create thousands of job opportunities in all over Egypt. In order for people like women that are providing for their households and young people to start to do their eco-friendly and environmental initiatives. We fund them, give them very competitive lending rates, and they only have to repay half of the fund. And we also market their products by letting them participate in major exhibitions. And we buy their products. We buy all our giveaways from our clients, eco-friendly giveaways, and they are made in Egypt. We have also been, the Green for Fund just announced that Banque will take a fund with $150 million in order to facilitate for all the manufacturers, the mid-manufacturers and enterprises to replace their machines with eco-friendly machines. We also help financing a lot of projects. For example, there is a big factory that is going to be built in order, it takes rice straws and convert it into MDF wood. So, of course, we know that rice has been a major cause of pollution in Egypt.
You are investing in dealing with the agricultural waste of the rice, for example?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have also seen your campaign on plastic, on banning plastic. And,
exactly. Yes, we have initiated this, a community initiative called Be Green. We have collaborated with a lot of ministries and NGOs. So we have done this beach cleaning, several beach cleaning campaigns in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment and our NGO Banque. Cleaning the beach and raising awareness about the plastics and the danger of plastics. We've also collaborated with the Ministry of Education, and we have led a workshop in 150 schools to raise awareness, and we provided them also with recycling bins, so they will be in line with the system worldwide.
I will come back to this paradigm shift of you trying to convince people to invest in environments, but also money at the same time. In another question, but I will go back to Janaina, and I will ask her about structures of environment in France, democratic structures, civil actors, movements, the act of freedom of speech. how does that contribute to the overall awareness of the French citizens, and whether this happens hand in hand with the government, or people are free to go with what they think when it comes to. So my ambition is to know from you more on the overall state of awareness and alertness of the French people towards the problem of environment.
Thank you, Waleed. Yes, last June there were local elections and we all started talking about a green wave. There are deep changes happening in France right now. Change in consumers' behaviors, change in voters' behaviors, and change in lifestyle. So voters made it clear. They sent a very strong signal. In a nutshell, we have a Green Party, but everyone was making fun of it. They didn't have even one MP in the parliament. They're very small and they have no money, all right? So for years, they were part of the landscape, but they were no serious player. And all of a sudden, in June, voters sent a very strong signal and they took over among the biggest cities of France. And they are part of the winning coalition in Paris and in Marseille. So this is a very strong message to the political elite that, you know, from left to right, it doesn't matter anymore. Environment is at the heart of citizens' preoccupations. There was a poll in 2019 that was very telling. Environment comes first in the priorities and the worries of French citizens before unemployment and socio-economic issues, number one. About consumers, we're seeing the development of a very interesting local production, organic production movement, and people want this to be distributed in the kindergarten. We want our children to eat proper food. We are fed up with industrial toxic stuff. And that's a very clear signal to anyone that wants to sell food in France and in Europe. It will have to be integrated in the products you want to export to our countries. Last but not least, with Corona, confinement, the youth even is fed up with this, you know, this city pollution, noise, stress, and there's a trend to going back to simpler, greener communities. So they're starting to buy outside of the cities and going back to the land, if you want. So that's very interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned Corona, because also Paris has just launched this 15 minutes city, so that you can go all around Paris within the 15 minutes cycling, kind of. And that also came in return after the Corona. I think also Paris is one of the cities that experienced heavy demonstrations with Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish girl who was pro-environment. And as someone who comes from this, who lives this contemporary environment, I would hope to see the same happening in our countries, where there's much more freedom given to the environmental acts and also to people who like to promote environmental thinking. Thank you, Janaina. Moataz, I want to come and discuss with you the word green economy. We hear this very often now in our day-to-day business language. Not many people understand green economy, but I'm sure Shell does understand what green economy is. So if you could tell us in general green economy and sustainability for Shell, what are concrete examples that we have on the ground here in Egypt?
Sure. So again, I think for the diversity of the audience, there is a term in the energy sector that is, it's actually in the world as well, that you guys need to really know and understand. It's called the energy transition. This term is now the big buzzword in our industry and probably globally when it comes to environment. Energy transition is trying to shift the energy mix in the world from the heavy CO2 emission space to the low carbon emission space. And it's called transition because it has to take time. You mentioned multiple pathways towards that. And it's very difficult because of the past choices of societies, of governments, of companies, of everyone. And collaboratively, everybody needs to pitch in and start doing their role, because in Shell we're very famous for something called the scenarios, Shell scenarios, and we've drawn scenarios for energy transition and low carbon emission future. And the one scenario that reaches this Paris target is a very challenging pathway, and everybody needs to collaborate towards that. Governments, businesses, and societies. So that's one thing that I need to really send to the audience. The energy transition and the target, the collaboration needs to be there. To do that, as a company, we are trying our role, and it has multiple facets. So obviously, in our footprint, in our operation, we need to work towards this through technologies, lowering the CO2 emission and footprint of our operations, but also capturing the CO2 in case we cannot not let it go or stop it from emissions. So that's one side to the business. The other side to the business is investing in a diversified portfolio that goes towards businesses with low CO2. And that's where we look at lots of other options. We're getting into renewable business, energy efficiency, but even nature-based solutions globally, which is trying to work towards what nature can do to solve emissions by reforestation and whatnot. So there are lots of areas where you can contribute as a company, but also as a society and governments towards this. In my portfolio, for instance, we're also doing that through our social investment programs. That's why I'm here today, because we're trying to contribute to, for instance, the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Egypt and try to influence towards energy and sustainability. So we work with the AUC for the past 3 years to initiate a new track in the AUC to encourage youth towards building startups that works towards energy and sustainability. This is one way to contribute and encourage the society to work with us towards this very, very challenging. Some people quote it as the most challenging threat for mankind, which is the energy transition and the climate change. This is in brief. I don't want to go further.
No, but I'm glad to know also. Let me explain a little bit of what you said, because you mentioned a very important thing, which is the carbon capture and sequestration. And for those of you who may not know it, it's about really absorbing the carbon and putting it in molecular structures or other substances that has another industrial use. So instead of having the carbon dioxide free in the air, this is captured and stored and has another economic value. And I'm glad to know that Shell is, of course, on top of that. Shell was also one of the first petroleum companies that went into renewable energy investments, which is not a very...
We actually went there very early.
Yes,
Actually, we went in early and we left because it was too early. That tells you as well that sometimes timing, and that's a good lesson for startups. Again, we don't want to lose the context of being in a startup summit. Timing is also very critical if you want to make money, obviously. If you're going for a different objective, that's a different discussion. But going too early you can also miss the target there. So timing is everything. So yeah, and now we're back very strong. And as I said, in CCS, in energy efficiency, by the way, as well. As I said, nature-based solutions and everything else.
Thank you. Ghada, let me ask you about the new waste management law in Egypt. I will not ask you about the law, but we all know that now there is a new regulatory authority that is taking care of waste in Egypt, and waste is a huge opportunity, not only for pollution, but also for investment. Can you tell us if you have already experience there? Because I know Qalaa has been interested in agricultural waste, but what about municipal waste? I think we're waiting for it.
Municipal waste. Okay, to answer that question, I'm going to go back to get anchored in a fact that I think all of us in the business community, but just globally, realizing why we talk again about this as important. Why is pollution an issue? Why is waste an issue? Why is sustainability an issue? Why is environment an issue? And there's only one planet, and we have depleted a lot of resources, and you need to be responsible so that you don't take away from these resources for the future generations that will need them in order to also develop. So I think there is a rise in consciousness. And I would say more on the Western side, and in our countries it's starting to happen in different ways. One, As Antonio Guterres said, there is only one planet. The Sustainable Development Goals is a good framework, and it is providing countries like ours with Vision 2030 a way to really become relevant and to contribute to the consumption, a responsible consumption of resources, responsible production, responsible waste management, so that our contribution to the rest of the world shows a responsibility towards future generations. So that's really critical. I think when you come at the company level, and that's also partially, waste is one aspect. If you don't start from the product itself, if you don't have product stewardship, if your product is polluting, you will have all these plastics. And I think this is something to keep in mind as we're trying to come up with new solutions. Yeah? How can we? I mean, we've basically prevented single-use containers in our company, but this is just, it's a culture and an awareness, and it really is concerning to me as a citizen, not as a representative of, as a responsible citizen, which we all need to start to think about what it means in this day and age. The truth of the matter is, we don't have the same pressure from consumers on the businesses in Egypt. The level of awareness and understanding of the impact and the problem and the magnitude of the problem needs to be better taught and better explained and better communicated, and we're not doing it. I do, however, believe that the pressure we are receiving from global and Western entities that are trying to say, look, you want to do business with me? There's going to be new rules and regulations. There has to be disclosures. There has to be environmental standards. So when you get down to what you're doing, you have to think, do I want to export that product? Does it have an international market? Are we going to accept it if it's not environmentally responsible? And environmental responsibility is from, as I said, what you're producing. So, for instance, let me take the refinery. It's not just that I'm taking pollutants that were going in the air and bringing in a product that is going to substitute imports and is going to clean the air, but also environmentally, in my consumption of the water of the Ismailia, directly Ismailia, we wanted to make sure that we are really minimizing our consumption of that water as a resource. So we built in closed circuits and trying to make sure that we're really responsible in the consumption there. In terms of waste also, we have a system in place to make sure we manage waste. Across our portfolio, we're trying to make sure that we are we have Icaro and Integ, as you said, solid waste management, both municipal as well as agri. We're trying to find ways where we can actually use them, where we can send them after the lifetime has been consumed of that resource. Whatever is left, can we send it to them and what can be done? So we're trying to have also a consciousness within our portfolio to increase the responsibility in terms of what we're doing with our waste. And as a business, as an industry, obviously it was not a profitable industry for us to be in, even though for the past 10, 12 years we've been there, because the framework, the regulatory framework was not there. Now that we have the new law that has passed, you're absolutely right. You've created an infrastructure where it can be a win-win situation. And I think absolutely we're very keen on being a very active player through Tawazun, Icaro, and Integ.
I'd love to see more of the work happening, because actually it's absolutely important that we have clean streets, that we have clean homes, that the overall environment is clean, and whether this has an economic benefit or not, which definitely it does have, but it's also a social imperative that we need to have a clean country after all. Thank you for that. And then I go back to Banque, Heidi, Nahas, with your corporate communication massive experience, as said. Where are the difficulties of communicating messages about environmental compliance and taking care of the environment? Where's the difficult part? What is the tweak that you use to attract people?
Well, actually, I don't face any difficulties when we communicate to our clients. Actually, because we do provide them with a lot of facilities, they are very much encouraged, and they do take part in our initiatives. As I mentioned before, we offer them very competitive lending facilities and marketing facilities, marketing their product, and we are clients of our clients. So these are things that motivate our clients, and they're very much willing to participate in all the eco-environment initiatives.
Very good. Are we good with time? Okay. Oh, I didn't see that. It's fine. Right. I'm going to go through opening this to our audience. If anyone has a question, I think we have time to take one or two questions. Otherwise, I have more questions for you. But you have a question, please. To whom? Oh, okay.
Ghada. It's okay.
أهلا بيك. I think we got your point, but then we have 3 minutes left, so maybe you want to answer.
Hola, Juan. Thank you for your question. Listen, the blame game is not very useful. I agree with you. You can also say that, you know, China has adopted very ambitious targets to reduce air pollution. And at the same time, they're exporting polluting activities in their Silk Belt. We know that for a fact. So this chain of exporting to the poorest, the dirtiest industries has to stop. We agree with that, and we should all focus on this positive agenda rather than pointing fingers. And none of us is perfect. I'm not saying, you know, like we're better than them. I'm just stating facts. Okay, welcome.
I think it's also worthwhile to say whether it's Europe, not in defense of European economies or countries, but at least the European Union puts a lot of money in cleaning pollution, whether on its territories or outside, which is a very traditional behavior for European countries, but it's also not very common for others, and it's therefore there's a compromise. At the end of the day, we all need those devices and we all need paper. So the responsibility that is there, and there is money being paid. But now the second question.
I think first, you're so right about the Sustainable Development Goals and the awareness level of awareness, and it's not even high among business community, let alone the rest of the world. Having said so, however, what happened is, I mean, the UN has gone through the millennial goals, and then from the millennial goals which failed, then they had to come up with the SDGs. The truth is you do need a framework, and that framework, if anything, what it does is it creates high consciousness that your responsibility goes beyond profit. And I think if there is anything that we all have seen and are seeing, and I've learned from watching COVID and its impact on all of us, is how interconnected we all are. And I think to your family and to every single person and one of us and startups, it's about being responsible citizens. And being a responsible citizen encompasses all of those SDGs. It's each of us has a responsibility in in what we consume, how we consume, what we do. And do you call it SDGs? Do you call it Sustainable Development Goal 12 because it's responsible consumption and production, or do you call it SDG 11 climate action? Truth of the matter is the facts behind these SDGs are there. We're all seeing them and witnessing them. And I think what we're looking for is rather a change, an acceleration of change in how we do things collectively, individually, as organizations and governments are trying, but I do believe it has to be echoed by everyone. To the extent the business community has a framework, and I tell you, one of the things we struggle with is how fragmented the initiatives tend to be on the ground, and in fact, if you bring them all together, you can make a difference. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I think we can conclude by saying that actually when mankind has used coal for the very first time in an industrial process, the intention was to better our livelihoods, but the ambition was not to pollute the earth. We have arrived to the time, maybe 10 years or 15 years ago,
We've run out of time.
We've run out of time. That we need to change, and we cannot deny this, and I think we all need to change. Thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you, Techni Summit, for providing this platform. It has been a pleasure being here.